the day, but we should start to see something a little bit brighter developing from the west later on as that all pushes away towards the east. Temperatures are going to be a little bit higher than today across northern parts and feeling it with those lighter winds, but further towards the southeast, similar temperatures getting into the mid-20s. Now into Sunday, there could be a fair bit of cloud across central southern parts for a time, perhaps the odd spot of rain, but otherwise it's looking largely bright and a good deal of sunshine around, and with that we are going to be dragging in some hotter air. So temperatures rising, high 20s on Sunday. By Monday, we're looking at low 30s in the southeast, but the risk of thunderstorms for some. Bye-bye.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
We could be calling you with the news that you've won our latest Great British giveaway. An incredible £30,000 in tax-free cash. David from Kent was our last big winner. Listen to what he had to say about getting that winning call.
Hi, I'm David from Kent and I won £15,000 and it couldn't have come at a better time. I was gobsmacked. What have you got to lose for what it costs? In fact, I've done it again this week, so I'd recommend it to anybody.
For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text CASH to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
I'm Bev Turner. Thank you for joining us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. Are you comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister?
Which is it?
Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Pearce. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From the world headquarters of GB News, this is Friday Night Live with me, Ben Leo. The weekend starts here and there's plenty of action to get stuck into. On tonight's show, Sadiq Khan says he feels unsafe as a Muslim in Britain following the riots. Well, I guess now he knows how Jews feel in London. Elsewhere, 7 out of 10 of the most deprived areas of England experienced some of the worst rioting in the past fortnight. Surprise, surprise, what does that tell us? And are the BBC right to ask disgraced former presenter Huw Edwards to return the £200,000 he was paid from licence fee coffers after he was arrested for paedophilia last year? And should a commentator be slammed for misgendering an athlete at this year's Olympics? Very good evening to you back home. Get your cups of teas in, or maybe the G&Ts. Joining me today in the studio is former advisor to Jeremy Corbyn, James Schneider, broadcaster and TV personality Precious Muir, and communications officer at the Institute of Economic Affairs, Reem Ibrahim. I'll share my thoughts on Sadiq Khan's bombshell Guardian interview next, but first, your news headlines with Tatiana Sanchez.
Ben, thank you very much and good evening. The top story. We start this bulletin with some breaking news now. There are no survivors after a plane carrying 62 people plummeted into a residential area in the state of Sao Paulo in Brazil. That's according to local authorities. And if you're watching us on television now, you can see footage of the plane drifting downward and spiralling as it falls, crashing through trees and breaking into a plume of smoke. The state's fire brigade has confirmed that 7 crews have been dispatched to the crash site. The airline Vopas has said there were 58 passengers and 4 crew members on board that flight. There are no survivors. In other news, former Labour councillor Ricky Jones has been remanded in custody after appearing in court on charges of encouraging violent disorder at a rally organised by Stand Up to Racism. Jones was filmed addressing a crowd at the London demonstration on Wednesday evening. The 57-year-old was charged at Westminster Magistrates Court, which heard he gave a speech to a crowd which was capable of encouraging or assisting the commission of violent disorder. Plea and trial preparation has been set for the 6th of September. A 30-year-old man has been jailed for 8 months for racially aggravated intentional harassment during the riots in Leeds. The judge said his sentence was reduced to take his guilty plea into account. At one point, Jordan Plain was filmed with others mocking Muslim prayers. Meanwhile, a Facebook user who urged people to attack a Leeds hotel used to house asylum seekers has also been jailed. 28-year-old Jordan Parler has been sentenced to 20 months after pleading guilty to publishing written material intended to stir racial hatred. Meanwhile, 2 men have been sent to prison for an attack on what prosecutors described as pro-EDL protesters after rival demonstrations clashed in Leeds city centre last Saturday. 21-year-old Samir Ali and 31-year-old Adnan Ghafour admitted a fray earlier this week. Meanwhile, a man who swore at a police officer before kicking him amid disorder in central London has been sentenced today. 20-year-old Ozzy Kush swore at officers responding to widespread disorder in Westminster on the 31st of July. Officers with the Metropolitan Police were walking along Whitehall in the direction of Trafalgar Square, informing demonstrators that a dispersal order was in force and encouraging people to leave the area. While taking exception to their presence, Kush was recorded walking across the path of the officers before sticking his middle finger towards an officer and then kicking him. And disgraced former BBC News presenter Huw Edwards has been asked to return his salary by the corporation's board. It comes after the 62-year-old admitted in court last week to having indecent images of children. 7 of the 41 images were described as being in the most serious category of child abuse pictures and videos. The BBC's board has told him to repay his salary from the time he was arrested in November last year, saying the presenter undermined trust in the BBC and brought it to disrepute. And those are the GB News headlines for now. I'm Tatiana Sanchez. More from me in an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thanks, Tatiana. Now, there's been a moving revelation today from the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, who appears to be sharing the same feeling many Londoners and indeed many Brits have been experiencing for some years now. In a revealing interview with The Guardian, the Mayor said the violent riots that have plagued Britain had left him feeling unsafe as a Muslim politician and his daughters feeling scared for their safety for the first time. He admitted that racist thugs who took part in the chaos of recent weeks had, quote, triggered memories of his own battles with bigots of his childhood, namely the BNP and the National Front. Mr Khan said, clearly, I'm not safe, which is why I've got police protection. He added, it's difficult to explain the ripples when you've been targeted because of your religion or colour or your skin colour, and you can't change either of those things. Look, like any rights-minded person, I completely condemn violence, the threats, the racism and thuggery of any kind from any quarters. And I speak as a father that the fact that Sadiq Khan's children have been left scared as a result of the rotten scenes of recent weeks is indeed heartbreaking. But the truth is, the mayor's own admission that he personally feels unsafe in his own city shouldn't come as a surprise to him. He's been in charge since 2016, overseeing 8 long years where the capital I once loved has turned into a lawless hellhole. How does he think Britain's tiny Jewish minority has felt over the past 10 months, dealing with rabid Palestine protesters, many who have called for the destruction of Israel while screaming anti-Semitic tropes week on week? He'll also be well aware that cases of anti-Semitism in Britain have rocketed since October the 7th, but he's largely remained quiet on that front. And let's not forget, it was Sadiq Khan himself who once said in 2017 that being prepared for terrorist attacks was, quote, part and parcel of living in a big city. That outrageous comment came just months after ISIS sympathiser Khalid Mahmoud killed 4 people on Westminster Bridge by mowing them down in a car. And let me tell you, I'll never forget that day because I was one of the first people on the scene. Bodies strewn all over the bridge, chaos unfolding in real time as London once again came under attack. The month after Sadiq's part and parcel comment, the 2017 London Bridge terror attack took place. Islamist extremists mowed people down in a van before going on a stabbing spree in Borough Market. Once again, unbelievably, I found myself at the centre of that attack as well and will never forget the haunting image of a young Australian girl who'd had her throat cut by terrorists. I think about her every June the 3rd and probably will forever. In September that same year, just months later, a homemade bomb partially detonated on a train at Parsons Green tube station, injuring 22 people. Luckily, no one died, and luckily I wasn't there for that one. But to say these inexplicable acts are, quote, part and parcel of living in a big city was a huge insult to those who have suffered and died at the hands of terrorism. It's also an insult for Sadiq Khan to complain of feeling unsafe after nearly a year of anti-Israel marches, which has left British Jews too scared to leave their homes. And it's a massive insult to the hundreds of people, including young children with their lives ahead of them, who have been knifed and gunned down in Sadiq Khan's lawless London over the years he's been in charge. Not everybody is afforded the luxury of 24-hour taxpayer-funded security, Mr. Mayor. You're privileged and lucky enough to have a burly security team following your every move. And rightly so, as a public official who's dealing with horrible death threats. But I'd politely suggest playing the victim card doesn't wash with many people living in fear in London and beyond who aren't afforded such luxuries. And in just a few last moments, the King has expressed his, quote, heartfelt thanks to the emergency services in phone calls with the Prime Minister and police chiefs, praising their efforts to, quote, restore peace and sharing how he had been greatly encouraged by the many examples of community spirit that had countered the aggression and criminality. Joining me now to get stuck into this in the studio is former advisor to Jeremy Corbyn, James Schneider, broadcaster and TV personality Precious Muir, and communications officer at the IEA, Reem Ibrahim. Panel, good evening.
Hello, good evening.
Hello.
How are you?
Oh, yeah, not bad. A bit tired. I've been up since 4 a.m. Second show of the day.
It's a Friday night, you did drink.
Quick word on the King first. So he's, again, he's spoken out about the riots of the past couple of weeks. He previously asked for an update from the government to what was going on. What do you make of his intervention, Reem?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting just from the riots and on that perspective. I think that you're absolutely right with everything you said in the monologue, specifically about the hypocrisy. There are figures like Sadiq Khan that are effectively there saying that, you know, they have taxpayer-funded security, they are obviously protected and rightfully so. However, there are millions of people across London that have felt unsafe over the last few years, and ultimately this is a result of Sadiq Khan's own failures.
James, you were, if I may say so, scowling slightly when I was reading that monologue.
Yeah, I don't mean to get off on a bad start, but I found the monologue, to be honest, churlish and dishonest. I mean, Sadiq Khan...
Which part?
Well, quite a lot of it. I'll itemise if you want. I've got at least 3 points.
Go on then.
I think that Sadiq Khan is allowed to say that he feels fear, firstly because there are terrorist threats and plots against him. Secondly, if you have experienced racism in your childhood, as he did, seeing the scenes as we all saw on our devices of mosques under attack, buildings set on fire, roadblocks set up, people being dragged out of their cars, it's understandable that someone would say that their memories of racism would be triggered off by seeing that happening. On the point about Jews feeling unsafe, speaking as part of that small minority and one of these whatever you call it, rampaging pro-Palestinian, rabid pro-Palestinian protesters, it simply isn't true that the hundreds of thousands of people who week after week after week have been opposing our government's complicity in the crimes that are taking place against the Palestinian people are in any way a threat to Jewish people. And there's one final point, just one last point, which I think is particularly churlish and dishonest. He said that, reading from your own script, he said that being prepared for a terrorism attack, not wanting one to happen, not one happening, being prepared for one. I want the mayor to be prepared for a terrorism attack. I want the Met to be prepared for a terrorism attack. I want our whole government to be prepared. I don't think saying that we are prepared and being prepared is part of being in government, which it really should be.
He was rightly slammed for that comment. The terrorist attacks from native Islamist Brits should not be happening in this country. Of course. And you said then the fact that hundreds of thousands of pro-Palestine protesters who have taken to the streets in London aren't all anti-Semites. Of course. And that's in the same way that the thousands of people protesting this week and last...
No, it's not.
Sorry?
No, it's not.
Let me finish my point. In the same way that thousands of people who took to the streets this week voicing concerns about migration aren't all far-right thugs. There are, yes, a few knuckleheads.
Yeah. So let's look at the output of those two things. The output of week after week after week, hundreds of thousands of people protesting against our government's...
Do you accept some Jews felt unsafe during this protest?
I'm not going to deny how people would subjectively feel, of course.
That's what I'm talking about.
No, how people would subjectively feel, of course. But let's look at the output of those two different types of protest. One of them is violent attacks and racist violent attacks on people up and down the country, and the other one are large demands on our government to no longer sell arms to Israel and be complicit in the crimes which are being committed against the Palestinians. The arrests that are made on...
How is the UK government complicit in Israeli genocidal crimes? How is that the case at all?
Because of selling arms to Israel, which is in breach of international law, which is in breach of our own laws, as the legal judgment will show, following, for example, the International Criminal Justice's case on...
I think we're kind of like... I know what you're saying and you're making your point, but we're kind of getting off track here. Sadiq Khan is a mayor. He's a mayor of London. And as a person of colour, I want to be able to look to the mayor of London and be able to know that he's putting my thoughts and values and my safety ahead of anything, right? Because I feel like I'm voting for you. If I'm voting for you, you need to obviously look out for me. And I feel the knife crime right now is horrific. It's horrendous out there. And being re-elected, I have no idea why he was, because he hadn't got a handle on it from before. So now being re-elected, he's not actually he's doing the same things he'd done before still today.
So I think
nothing has changed.
So I think what you just said is completely legitimate point to make, and I wouldn't say was churlish or dishonest, because you're not taking...
just me, then, that's being churlish and dishonest.
So far, we've all got time. We could all get in on the game, but that's a legitimate criticism.
That's my focus. As a person who's born and raised in London, grew up in London, and I've seen the differences. Knife crime is horrific.
And James, that's my only point. I'm not saying Sadiq Khan shouldn't feel unsafe, because he should after the scenes of this week, and I'm not saying that his children shouldn't feel unsafe. I'm simply saying, welcome to the club, Sadiq. Londoners have felt this for many years. Jews have felt this for the past year or so, and now you're feeling it.
And it's also his fault. I mean, let's be honest here. He has been mayor of London for quite a long time now.
Such a long time.
It is his fault, and ultimately, actually, a lot of those kind of crimes, I believe that he is complicit in allowing those things to occur, and at the same time, they're not allowing the government to then work on it.
Well, he's not getting control of the situation. He's not getting control. It's the issue of not handling it. And I think that he kind of just looks over this situation and think it's going to kind of sort itself out. It's not.
But also the fact that the Metropolitan Police themselves, I think, have such a large scope of what they're allowed to do. The fact that they end up spending a lot more time arresting people for tweeting or putting out a comment on X, rather than actually sort of looking at those specific crimes themselves. And I think what's interesting about that is the Mayor of London himself can say that he himself feels unsafe. But actually, if you're thinking about it from a wider perspective, he's only himself to blame.
I just don't know why you need to go and do a Guardian interview, a big bombshell interview, saying, I feel unsafe, the far right have made me feel like, you know, I'm unsafe in my own city. Mate, you have a full-time 24-hour security team of Metropolitan Police officers on by your side day in, day out. Ordinary Londoners don't have that. Jews...
Ordinary Londoners don't have that, but also, to be fair, we don't have plots against our life. At least I hope that we aren't having plots against our life that regularly happen. Yes,
there are plots against Brits every day.
There are specific plots against Sadiq Khan, which there aren't specific plots against us. And we know, like Donald Trump, there was an assassination attempt. He was that close from being killed. Again, that is someone who has lots of security. So I think that it's not weird for someone who faces a large amount of death threats to say, I'm frightened about that.
I agree, he needs it. My only point being is he has this security team. Jews don't have security with them, the police by their side all the time, Londoners don't have it all the time. I'm just making the point. Yes, he deserves it. Yes, there are threats against his life, but he has 24-hour security. Other people don't. Do you accept, James, just briefly on these pro-Palestine marches, that some Jewish people feel unsafe as a result of these marches and some of the behaviour going on in them?
Of course, I would not say that someone's subjective experience is wrong. That's the experience they're having. What I would say is that when from the top of our media and our politics, people are saying London is a no-go zone, that these are hate marches, that there are hundreds of thousands of jihadists marching in the streets, and all sorts of absolute nonsense. What those people are doing is frightening Jewish people.
I mean, some of it is hateful.
I was about to say,
can I just say
this? My mum was on the marches, the pro-Palestine marches, and my family are Muslim, and from that perspective, they do believe more fervently than I do that actually the cause and the pro-Palestinian cause is one worth fighting for. However, it is absolutely abundantly clear that there are many, many Jewish people in London that felt absolutely unsafe walking the streets in London, in the same way that many Muslims at the moment feel incredibly unsafe as a result of the far-right protests. Now, I think we've got to make the point here. It is perfectly reasonable to say, I believe that actually immigration is too high in this country.
Agreed.
There are ways
100%.
to do that, but we can condemn the protests, we can condemn setting mosques on fire, we can condemn those people, and at the same time say, actually having the perspective that there is too much immigration in this country is a perfectly reasonable perspective.
It's a reasonable
Reem, that sounds a bit too sensible.
We've got to have some nuance.
Are we dealing with sensible politics these days? James, you put it quite aptly yourself. You know, the hundreds of thousands of people who go on these pro-Palestine marches aren't all rabid anti-Semites. And again, I say, just as the thousands of people who attended protests this week, you did get some knuckleheads. You did get some knuckleheads who are racist and targeted mosques, and they've rightly been banged up. But they're not all far right.
They're not all racist, exactly. I think that we're losing the sight of the actual message, OK? There are people out there stealing stuff from Greg's Bakery and stealing Crocs, but they are not the masses, right? We are also concerned. As a UK citizen, I am concerned of mass immigration, right? Mass immigration and migration and all of this stuff that we should be concerned about. We're not concerned of the following stuff that's happening because of the rioting and the damage to property and all of this stuff, but they're separate groups. And as a woman of colour, I can say that I am not a racist. And I don't... And as... If you want to jump in here, but I just want to make sure that everyone is aware that there are two groups. There are obviously people are taking advantage of the circumstances and using these riots and these protests to cause problem and chaos. Yeah. But there are also people that are really, truly concerned about the concerned about the mass migration that we have in this country. We simply cannot manage and function as a country to have this many people coming in. We just can't. And every UK citizen should be concerned. Not because if you're white, not because if you're mixed, not because if you're black. We as a country, as UK citizens, we should all be concerned about that situation.
Precious Muir bringing the dose of common sense on Friday night. James,
the reason why they're in no way comparable is 10 days ago, how this started. It didn't start that there was a set of protests against the levels of migration, which some people in it then went and attacked the mosque. It started totally the other way around. It started with a far-right racist attacks on mosques and then other far-right racist attacks around the country. It's not a protest movement that's got out of control. It started as a racist attack on people.
Sorry to interject. We're going to carry this on after the break. Stick with us. We're going to be getting stuck into that. And also, Huw Edwards, he's been asked by the BBC to return his £200,000 salary, paid for by the licence fee payer, no less, after he was arrested for paedophilia. And, of course, an update on the Olympics. Is it the wokest Olympics yet? This is Friday Night Live with Ben Leo on GB News. Back in a tick.
Good Good Afternoon Britain. Weekdays from midday.
It's a very difficult issue, this, right? As far as we know, the boxer with male chromosomes was born with female genitalia.
Yeah, I mean, it's actually quite simple. You know, sex in humans is binary and immutable because we are mammals. And there is a minority of people who have disorders of sexual development, and that can affect a person's reproductive organs. But these people are male or female. And yesterday, what we witnessed was basically just glorified male violence against women and girls. The difference is, I mean, that happens every day all over the world. And the difference is that in every other circumstance, we consider beating up women to be wrong, but it was deemed acceptable by those at the IOC because they're claiming that it's sport, but it's not. It's violence and it's wrong.
Peter, Lottie's right, isn't she, that we've been talking a lot recently about violence against women and girls, and regardless of whether this person is intersex or transgender, they have male chromosomes. That means they have a very, very distinct biological advantage that could actually be fatal to a female athlete competing against them.
Well, of course, sport does need to be fair, and we do need to examine this case very thoroughly. There are reports that the boxer, Iman Khalif, was born a biological woman. She is not transgender. She is not non-binary. She is not intersex. She may have elevated levels of testosterone, but that's entirely natural. It's beyond her control. It's the way she was born. And that is why the International Olympic Committee has said that she falls within the rules.
GB News, the People's Channel. Weekdays on GB News. Wake up to breakfast every day from 6 a.m, followed by Britain's newsroom at 9:30. At noon, it's Good Afternoon Britain, followed by Martin Daubney from 3 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled.
Lovely. Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello, welcome back. Now, the government last night warned people to think before they post, saying that content that incites violence online could be illegal. Cheshire Police later announced that a woman had been arrested in, in connection with an inaccurate social media post about the identity of the attacker in the Southport murders. Due to the arrest, we won't comment further on that specific case, but it comes as the nation recovers from a week of riots that's seen more than 150 people charged in relation to the disorder, as well as for the comments made on social media. And it's also been reported that 7 of the 10 most deprived areas of England witnessed riots in the past 2 weeks. Let's cross now to Belfast, where protesters have gathered this evening and are expected to potentially, Doogie Beattie, kick off tonight. What's going on?
Yes, well, hello, good evening, Ben. Just a short while ago, the 2 protests dispersed here. There was, of course, the pro-immigration protests on one side and the anti-protests on the other side. And the pro-protests were actually massive. They had so well organised, obviously so much money backing them, and were policed very lightly. But there was hundreds and hundreds of them. On the other side, just here, was very few, probably about 150 of them. And these are people from working class areas who are not racists, who are not anti-immigrant, but are really, really concerned about the amount of undocumented immigration going into their areas. And it was quite laughable sometimes, because in Belfast they have quite black humour, and they said, well, I'll tell you what, if these people are are so much for immigration coming in. Why don't we just send the undocumented males from our area into those middle class areas? And I think they will be forwarding that very question on Monday to members of the Northern Ireland Assembly, and you never know, it could actually work. So tonight they have dispersed, but quite a few of these here were facing massive chants from this side of Nazi scum and whose streets are streets, and they really did frustrate this side of the protests, and they have dispersed, and most of them have moved off towards East Belfast, and we will be watching very, very closely tonight to see if there's any trouble in and around that area.
OK, Doogie BC in Belfast, thank you. I'm glad to see it looks fairly quiet and peaceful. I suggest you go to a bar or something and treat yourself to a G&T or a whiskey. What's your tipple, Doogie?
Oh, definitely a whiskey and ginger, that would be me. And but yeah, of course, the real question here is, how much did this all cost? How much did it cost in security? And how much did it cost in days off work for the civil servants that obviously took half day off work to attend?
Yeah, Doogie, we saw it on Wednesday night, the planned 100 riots across England. Police helicopters in the air, thousands more police officers on the streets. How much did it cost? Millions and millions. Some people on the left side of the argument just said it was a hoax, so who knows where it came from. Doogie, thank you. Enjoy your whiskey. Right, over to my panel.
Wish we had a whiskey as well. My God.
We can arrange some. Shall I ask the powers that be in my ear to single malt?
Oh, yes, excellent.
Yeah?
Brilliant.
OK. Where were we before we left after the break? James, you were making a point about the pro-Palestine marches.
Yeah, I think I was saying that they're very different from the riots that we've seen, which, you weren't at the riots?
No, I was not. No.
So as in, the people who are taking the political position, the totally legitimate political position that you're taking, it's not like you were going and making a normal, peaceful protest and then out of that came anti-Muslim violent hate mobs. It was the anti-Muslim violent hate mobs that came first, which is why I don't think they're really a comparable thing.
And I also think that, this is the point you were making earlier, that actually there is this separate issue, right, that you can say it's perfectly legitimate to be upset about the UK's immigration policy. I actually don't agree with that at all. I'm very liberal on immigration. I think that ultimately labour market restrictions are like any other restriction on the economy. However, when we've got such a large welfare state, it is absolutely understandable that people feel as though immigration is far too high in this country, and that at the same time, when we're thinking about the way in which those particular people are then having their own taxpayer money being spent on those people at the same time, it is entirely understandable that people are upset. Now, you can protest without destroying private property 100%. And harming people. And we all, I believe, condemn...
being racist. You can put that message across, most definitely, 100%. I don't see why one has to be clumped with the other. If you have a real concern about your country, you should be able to speak up freely and say what you feel and how you're feeling as a UK citizen, as a citizen of your country. And you should not be tainted or told that you are all of a sudden being racist because you're simply saying a fact. You're simply saying the fact that there are a mass amount of people coming in that the country just simply can't handle.
James,
and saying that is not wrong.
What did you make of Sir Keir Starmer yesterday? He was asked whether he was going to address the underlying tensions that arguably caused the riots, and he ignored the question pretty much. He said, my focus is on the police, keeping the country safe. He didn't really answer the question.
I have to say, I don't keep up with all of his work, but...
do the government need to, at some point, address that?
But, I mean, the underlying issue is a small, as a percentage of the population, virulently racist minority that has set about attacking people and attacking places of worship. Egged on by parts of our politics, parts of our media and parts of social media.
Well, there's a lot of
that is the underlying reason. The reason why these things happened isn't fundamentally... If net migration last year was 500,000 higher or lower, it wouldn't have made any difference to these particular protests. The people that go and try to burn down a migrant hotel or go and attack a mosque aren't really doing it because of migration numbers. They're doing it because they don't like...
They're also reading misinformation of people like Andrew Tate online.
Right, and people from the media and people from our politics, of course.
So it isn't necessarily they're fueled. It is fueled
This
like
becomes
that.
a threat to freedom of expression. And this is the thing, picking up on what Ben was asking earlier, that actually the reason why people people like Keir Starmer effectively saying that there is a root cause to these problems. And actually, these far-right racists are being spurred on by anti-immigration rhetoric. I think that is a really, really slippery slope to go down, because effectively what we end up doing is restricting freedom of expression online. There is actually talks about...
Well, people like, for example, let me just go back to Andrew Tate. For example, he has a lot of followers, right? So if he's putting that misinformation out there, it creates chaos and mayhem.
But
right?
but
so we have to also make sure that we have to be... No, I'm not saying it needs to be illegal, but it should not be allowed for him to put out misinformation.
Why not? It's his own freedom of expression.
No, it's not freedom of expression
Absolutely
when it causes absolute mayhem and chaos.
Well, why? So again, this is the question about... Okay, but
if you're stating an individual is a certain race and a certain religion, then it fuels the fire.
So
do you understand what I'm trying to say? The child is nothing to do with the Muslim community, from what I remember, right?
Correct.
The child is a black African young child, right? He is 18 years old.
Yes.
He is then pushed out, or they pushed out this image of him as a child. I'm wondering why they haven't put a photograph of him as an adult. That's something else. But at the end of the misinformation that was put out on social media was not the right information.
But that doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. You should be allowed, I'm sorry, but you should be free to lie. As a public figure, as a politician, or indeed as somebody on Twitter,
lie?
you should be absolutely... We end up in these huge slippery slopes. There are questions about actually passing legislation to restrict that. I think this is outrageous. I believe in freedom of expression for everyone, and not just restricting for those...
You're supposed to use your platform as a person who is very well known on social media. I would never put out misinformation like that, because I know what it will cause.
OK, James been sitting very patiently. Let's bring you in.
I have a lot of sympathy for Reem's position, in that it wasn't misinformation that caused the racist violence. It is a contributing factor, and it helped start it off at this particular place in this particular time. And where people have said things which break the law, which incite, which lead to hatred, we have laws which should be used.
You should be free to hate, I think.
We have laws. So, for example, you should not be free to say this is caused by Muslims, and then people go and attack a mosque, and you go, oh no, I'm free to say that.
No, where I do agree, those attackers. I'm sorry, but this is the same argument with Trump and January 6th, effectively saying that Trump using this rhetoric meant that all of those people stormed the Capitol. I believe that as an individual, you say those particular things. If people then take that and hurt other people, it is on them. They are solely responsible. You cannot use, because again, we end up going into this huge slippery slope where we end up restricting freedom of expression.
I kind of understand where you're going with it.
You have to take responsibility for your actions and be very smart about what you say online, because people do take it for, like, the truth.
But then where does it end?
But we have to take a moral standing as an individual, so we know not to say those kind of things.
It's very easy to say that, but then how does the law work, Precious? Because ultimately, then what we end up saying is we're going to ban this person from saying this particular thing.
I don't think you should ban, but that person, that individual, needs to be responsible for what they're saying and putting out on social media.
We're going down a dark alleyway of free speech. James, I want to ask you very quickly. Nick Lowles, the chief exec of Hope Not Hate, far-left campaign group, he said...
It's not... I wouldn't call it a far-left.
Come on.
It's not my kind of far-left, anyway.
Oh, yeah, OK, extreme left. Nick Lowles said that a Muslim had been attacked with acid during the riots, arguably flaming intentions from the other side of it. He apologised when Cleveland police pulled him up on it. Should he be getting a knock on the door by the police?
I don't think he should be getting a knock on the... Well, because I'm not saying that the other side, that going the other way for saying that kind of thing, which is factually inaccurate, but people should trust what he says, much less after it. And so I think there are different types of incentives and punishments, and not all of them have to be legal.
OK, all right, interesting. It does raise questions, doesn't it, of two-tier policing, two-tier government.
I don't. Sorry?
Well, the question is, do people believe in freedom of expression or not? Either you do or you don't.
Yes, I agree with you.
There shouldn't be just... there has to be a middle ground here. Also, you have to take responsibility for what you're sharing. And nobody wants anybody to harm anybody else. So when you put that information out there, you should be very aware that it's OK.
I don't believe in hate speech. I don't believe that. I don't believe that's illegal.
We've got to go to a break. We'll continue the rivalries after the break, this time about Huw Edwards, the disgraced former BBC presenter. He's been asked by the BBC, I'm not sure whether he's going to do it, I don't see why he would now, but he's been asked to return the £200,000 worth of salary paid for by the licence fee payer, by the way, you and me, since he was arrested in November for paedophilia crimes. Should he return the money? And also, by the way, he's still getting his £300k a year pension, even if he does serve up to 10 years in the slammer for what he did. We'll be back in just a tick. This is Friday Night Live with Ben Leo.
Good evening. Here's your latest GB News weather coming to you from the Met Office. Things are going to hot up as we go through, particularly the latter part of this weekend, especially in the southeast. But before then, tomorrow will be a bit cloudy and a bit damp for some of us because we are going to see a bit of a frontal wave pushing its way in, and that's going to lead to increasing amounts of cloud as we go through the rest of this evening and overnight. But ahead of that, some clearer skies, and we're going to cling on to the clearer skies across eastern parts, but all the time a few showers across parts of Scotland, still pushing through on relatively brisk winds. In the west, where we have that cloud and that rain feeding in, temperatures aren't going to drop much. A bit fresher, though, towards eastern parts where we have some clearer skies. So that cloud and any outbreaks of rain will gradually make their way eastwards across England and Wales as we go through the day tomorrow. So whilst eastern parts will start off the day quite bright, it is going to turn a bit grey later on, and watch out for some heavy rain over the hills towards the west as well. A brighter start a bit further north, lots of fine weather for Northern Ireland, just a few showers, similar for northwest England. Whilst across Scotland there'll be quite a few showers around, perhaps something a little bit more persistent for a time, could be a little bit heavy, and there will be some blustery winds, although the winds not quite as strong as they have been through today. A largely grey, cloudy picture across much of England and Wales through large chunks of the day, but we should start to see something a little bit brighter developing from the west later on as that all pushes away towards the east. Temperatures are going to be a little bit higher than today across northern parts and feeling it with those lighter winds, but further towards the southeast, similar temperatures getting into the mid-20s. Now into Sunday, there could be a fair bit of cloud across central southern parts for a time, perhaps the odd spot of rain, but otherwise it's looking largely bright and a good deal of sunshine around, and with that we are going to be dragging in some hotter air, so temperatures rising, high 20s on Sunday. By Monday we're looking at low 30s in the southeast, but the risk of thunderstorms for some. Bye-bye.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threats on.
As time passes,
She could have saved Storm.
You made my argument for me.
My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter, with a sharp take on every story.
Went everywhere.
something practical could be done.
Or I can become something different.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Now, the BBC has asked Huw Edwards to return more than £200,000 in salary he earned after being arrested in November on child abuse image charges. BBC Chair Samir Shah said that the former presenter had, quote, behaved in bad faith by taking the salary, despite knowing what he'd done. And that comes after the 62-year-old admitted in court last week to having indecent images of children, 7 of which, by the way, of the 41 images were described as being in the most serious category of child abuse pictures and videos. James Schneider, I'm going to come to you first. We had a quick email saying either take the Jeremy Corbyn supporter off or ridicule him for his outrageous views. What do you say to that?
Well, my outrageous view in this case is that Huw Edwards should obviously give back the money, but holding on to it and his massive salary is just, or massive pension is so low down on his list of crimes, as you just read out, that I think we should more focus on that and how those sorts of things.
So you don't think he would return the money? I mean, I said earlier off air to the makeup artist, I said, why would he? His reputation is literally in the gutter. You are a disgraced, disgusting paedophile. I'm sure he's not concerned about what the public think about the 200k. Do you think he's going to be paying it back?
I've got no idea, but I mean, whether he does or I mean, he should, and the money should, of course, go to victims of this kind of disgusting abuse. But I think that's what we should more focus on, and rather than whether he's going to do the decent thing. We imagine he's not, because everything else suggests that he doesn't do the decent thing at all.
Sorry, I was just jump in. We also, legally speaking, I'm absolutely no Huw Edwards defender, of course. However, there is the element of the fact that we don't know. He's pled guilty to the charges of creation of those images. Creation, in those legal terms, effectively means he's downloaded them. So we don't know what the situation is. We have no idea what's actually happened.
Because it was read out in court. He had multiple images, 7 of which were the worst known to man, and he kept accepting them time after time over a period of time.
From a registered paedophile.
Be careful about, sorry, Reen, be careful about what?
I would just be careful about the fact that we don't necessarily know if he kept those images afterwards, if he had deleted them afterwards, if he had saved them as WhatsApp.
But he didn't come out. Nobody cares about that. If he's kept it or deleted it or whatever, he actually received those images and he viewed them. That's enough for me. I'm sorry.
But if somebody sends you something and you don't know, I'm not saying it's.
But he didn't come back with it. So if do you remember the Chris Langham one where there was something like that, and then he came out with, whether you can believe it or not, he came out with an explanation for why he had those images, and he said that they were abhorrent and so on and so forth. As far as I'm aware, he hasn't said, I don't know how the delete button or the block button works on my phone.
He actually hasn't come out and said anything.
Not as far as I'm aware.
I don't think I've heard a single statement from him since he was arrested, and all of this has happened. All we've heard is that obviously he got fired, and then he obviously was suspended, and all of these things, and not one word has come out of his mouth. And that is what is quite disappointing for the people that are paying their TV licence to BBC, and this man and everybody else, and the victims. But for him to not come out and even say, I am sorry for what this has caused anybody, if there's upset anyone,
if he was given legal advice,
and handed back the money that he received in salary. That is what a normal human being would do if they thought that at the end of the day they've done something wrong. I don't think he actually thinks he's done something wrong.
We don't know that.
I don't think he has, because you would come out and apologise.
In this country, Precious, we believe in innocent until proven guilty, and I do believe.
But he has. He's pled guilty. He's pled guilty.
We don't know what the actual.
Can I just say something? Can I say something? He's a wrong 'un.
Yeah, we all know he's a wrong
'un. There's no conversation about how many images did he get? Did he delete it in time? He's a wrong 'un. He's pled guilty to the most sick, depraved child abuse images. We should be thinking about the victims. We should be thinking about the licence fee payers, his employers, his poor wife.
Exactly, the wife and the kids. I mean, he's just ruined his entire life with all of these things that he's been hiding and living a double life. His wife has left him. She's probably in pieces, having to deal with this.
And the traumatisation on all the family themselves, but also the British public. I mean, he was a loved figure. He actually broke the news about the Queen's passing.
Yes.
And I think that for the British public itself, it's very, very difficult to hear this information.
So I could never agree with what you said before.
But we believe.
But we have.
There is no excuse.
Exactly.
I'm not giving an excuse. I'm just saying that we've got to allow the legal.
Okay, I'd like to hear from James.
The legal proceedings, as far as I'm aware, have happened. He hasn't had the sentencing yet, but he's been in court. He's said he's guilty. We've heard what the charges are, and yes, the litany of people that he has messed around through this is so incredibly long, including his own loved ones and friends and people that he worked with and all the rest of it. And of course, he should give back. Going back to the original point, should he give back this money? He should give back this money and much more than that.
Yes,
it's a form of the smallest token of restitution for the people that are the first victims of his crimes, who are the people who are in these images.
OK, well said. Thank you very much. We'll be back in just a tick. Coming up, should couples be given a £5,000 tax break to have kids? That's according to think tank Onwards. We'll be getting into that in just a moment. Stick with us.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
Sarah, welcome to the show. Obviously, you work for a tobacco company, so a little caveat there to slip in. Nevertheless, it's no surprise that the illegal market is growing so much. When you look at the cost of cigarettes in Britain, huge amounts of duty and oftentimes, of course, criminality always finds its way into the system. Tell us more about your report.
Absolutely. I mean, up to 90% of a packet of cigarettes is tax. And in the last year, there's been 2 tax increases that have equated more to the last 3 years combined. So now, if you're a roll-your-own smoker, a 30-gram pouch of roll-your-own will cost £22.50, but you can buy a counterfeit pack of 50 grams for £3. So there's a massive disparity. A lot of illegal tobacco is imported, but we do also have a problem in the UK with illegal tobacco factories. So in the last month, there's been an illegal tobacco factory in Gateshead, in Bury, busted, producing roll-your-own tobacco. And on the 12th of July this month, West Midlands gang illegal tobacco factory, the gang was found guilty of producing illegal tobacco, and that was more than £5 million lost tax revenue to the government. And actually, all of those people found guilty got a suspended sentence.
And how does that work? They're literally importing container loads of raw tobacco and packaging it up in factories in Britain, and they're using what appears to be British packaging illegally?
Yeah, some of it is branded packaging, so some of it isn't the kind of unbranded packaging we'd see on cigarettes and roll-your-own now, but it's relatively simple to reproduce, especially RYO. Our own pack swap data now shows that about 50% of the roll-your-own market is illegal tobacco.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Now, should couples be given a £5,000 tax break to have kids? The birth rate, of course, is in the gutter. We know that families aren't having children because they can't afford homes and everything else. The cost of living is through the roof. But now a think tank called Onwards, they reckon that couples should be given 5k tax breaks to encourage people to get busy in the bedroom and then eventually have children. Precious, let's come to you first. Good idea, bad idea?
I don't know, because I don't know if £5,000 is going to go too far. I mean, so far, like, honestly, schooling and education is absolutely insane. So I don't know where
Are any of you parents here?
No, I'm not a parent.
But I've got to say, I don't think this solves the problem. The reason why people aren't having children is because they can't afford homes, the cost of living crisis. The reason why we've got a housing crisis is because house prices are so high because the government restrict housing supply. Effectively, we need to look at the root of the problem. Actually giving hard-working taxpayer money to parents to effectively have more children does not solve the problem. We need to look at the root of the cause.
But James, we do need couples, I mean, Brits, not just Brits, people across the world. Japan, if their birth rate continues collapsing, there'll be no Japanese people in a generation. We do need to have children. How do we encourage that?
I think that people need to be supported and families need to be supported. And we're talking about the root causes of things. Childcare is ridiculously expensive, and housing costs are incredibly high, and the country has in effect not had a pay rise for nearly 2 decades. I mean, these are the fundamental things. I think it's good that some attention is being given to how can you help parents, but this is not going to be.
But why is it fair that the average taxpayer, the average person that is working incredibly hard, the average British person working incredibly hard for their money, and that some of that money is going towards the government, a lot of it highest tax burden since the Second World War. Why is it fair then then the government get to redistribute that to people that want to have children. I think that's absurd. There's a lot of people as well. But then what's the problem? The reason why people aren't having children is because they can't afford to do so.
And some just don't want kids as well. Let's just be very clear. Not everybody wants to have children. We're not all here just to have children.
I think that families...
You know, and women have a choice to have a better career, and, you know, they're just focused on other things.
I think we can encourage families and encourage the nuclear family, encourage people to have children without wasting taxpayers.
Well, those things could be made much easier. Like, if you had proper childcare, it'd be much easier.
Exactly.
It'd be much easier for both parents to be in work.
Exactly.
If you had shorter commutes because you've got better housing and better transport, all of these things make it better. And it is important about whether you know, we should all benefit from other people having children, being part of a cohesive society. We should want to.
Let me tell you, as a father of two, 5K won't touch the sides.
No,
so
it won't touch the sides.
Nice idea, but it won't touch the sides. Right, elsewhere, there was controversy in the women's Olympic shot put competition yesterday when a commentator misgendered US athlete Raven Saunders. So the BBC's Steve Backley introduced Saunders. He referred to the athlete as female, but was quickly corrected by his co-commentator. Let's have a listen.
Timing her run into these championships to good effect. The colourful character of Raven Saunders back. Good to see her back, sort of. Sort of see her, I mean.
Well, we can't see them very well. Raven Saunders actually non-binary, and wearing the mask there, we're quite used to seeing them with interesting attire.
Should that be allowed?
Why not?
Why not, indeed?
So if you didn't quite hear it, the commentator was saying she is doing well or something like that, and his co-commentator said, actually, they're non-binary. And also, by the way, this person, Raven Saunders, she was twerking on the field, she has gold teeth, doing all sorts of wacky dances. It was all a bit strange. James, should they be putting up their colleagues like that on the beeb for misgendering?
I don't think it's a controversy. It's a very easy thing to do to get it wrong. I'm sure that the what are they called? The commentator wasn't trying to. It's fine for the person to point out that that's not what they go by. I don't think it's particularly controversial one way or the other. In fact, having had a look at the photo and a bit of the footage that you refer to, it's probably the least interesting thing about this person.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I mean, it takes away from the person to see how easy it is. You slip up. Yeah. I think it's just easier to refer to the person as their name, which makes it more, you know, it's easier, and it's, you know, if you make it more difficult for yourself by trying to look at the individual and calling them him, they, it just gets too confusing. Calling them the name is much easier.
We heard today that the Labour Party in government are not going to make misgendering a hate crime, which I think is obviously the right thing to do. I've got to say, I don't really buy a lot of this stuff. I do think that James is right, that actually it's really not that big of a deal on air. But I've got to say, why is a non-binary person, why is a non-binary person playing or competing in the women's category?
Well, there you go. So that's even
because,
a confusing
because I mean, quite evidently, despite however they want to...
I think
they are a biological woman.
They're a woman. Yeah.
I don't believe that.
She goes by the name, or the person goes by the name of Hulk. Apparently.
Really?
That's her nickname.
That's not a name. I've got to say, I don't think non-binary is a legitimate gender. It's just absurd. But I believe in individual liberty.
I think all of the things that this person is doing is actually taken away from their talent at the Olympics.
Yeah.
I want to know what that person is doing, not what they, you know, identify as.
Right, we are out of time, unfortunately. James Snyder, Precious Muir, Reem Ibrahim, thank you so much for being with us. Thank you at home for being with us. Patrick Christie's is up next. Patrick, what's in store tonight?
Yeah, lots on. Well, look, with all this social media issue taking place at the minute, is the government trying to scare people into not voicing legitimate concerns about illegal immigration? There also appears to be a push to label all football fans as far right. Harry Redknapp's on to talk about that. We're also going to be discussing the comments by Sadiq Khan and Humza Yousaf saying they no longer feel safe in Britain because they are Muslims. I'm going to be making the point that I don't think it's just ethnic minorities who have a monopoly on fear in this country, actually. And pensioners, are they being made to pay so that public sectors can get a pay rise and we can also build housing accommodation for asylum seekers? On that note, I'm also going to be talking to a bloke who leads a council that is going to be turned into a town the size, or city the size of Oxfordshire under Angela Rayner's housing plan. So stay tuned.
Excellent. Patrick, look forward to it. You guys at home, thank you for joining me tonight. I hope you've had fun and it's been slightly informative at times, I hope. I'm going to bed, but I trust you will stay up now for Patrick Christie's. It's going to be a top show. Join me tomorrow on Saturday Morning Live, and I'm covering Mark Dolan again tomorrow night and for the rest of August. You lucky so-and-sos. See you soon. Good night.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening. Here's your latest GB News weather coming to you from the Met Office. Things are going to hot up as we go through, particularly the latter part of this weekend, especially in the southeast. But before then, tomorrow will be a bit cloudy and a bit damp for some of us because we are going to see a bit of a frontal wave pushing its way in, and that's going to lead to increasing amounts of cloud as we go through the rest of this evening and overnight. But ahead of that, some clearer skies, and we're going to cling on to the clearer skies across eastern parts, but all the time a few showers across parts of Scotland, still pushing through on relatively brisk winds. In the west, where we have that cloud and that rain feeding in, temperatures aren't going to drop much. A bit fresher, though, towards eastern parts where we have some clearer skies. So that cloud and any outbreaks of rain will gradually make their way eastwards across England and Wales as we go through the day tomorrow. So whilst eastern parts will start off the day quite bright, it is going to turn a bit grey later on, and watch out for some heavy rain over the hills towards the west as well. A brighter start a bit further north, lots of fine weather for Northern Ireland, just a few showers, similar for northwest England. Whilst across Scotland there'll be quite a few showers around, perhaps something a little bit more persistent for a time, could be a little bit heavy, and there will be some blustery winds, although the winds not quite as strong as they have been through today. A largely grey, cloudy picture across much of England and Wales through large chunks of the day, but we should start to see something a little bit brighter developing from the west later on as that all pushes away towards the east. Temperatures are going to be a little bit higher than today across northern parts and feeling it with those lighter winds, but further towards the southeast, similar temperatures getting into the mid-20s. Now into Sunday, there could be a fair bit of cloud across central southern parts for a time, perhaps the odd spot of rain, but otherwise it's looking largely bright and a good deal of sunshine around, and with that we are going to be dragging in some hotter air, so temperatures rising, high 20s on Sunday. By Monday we're looking at low 30s in the southeast, but the risk of thunderstorms for some. Bye-bye.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Don't miss out on your chance to win a whopping £30,000 in tax-free cash to spend however you like. It's extra cash that could really make a difference to your coming year. You could find yourself on that holiday you've always wanted to take, buy that treat that always seemed out of reach, or just send some of those day-to-day financial stresses packing. £30,000 could be yours. For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text CASH to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Weekdays on GB News. Wake up to breakfast every day from 6 a.m. Followed by Britain's newsroom at 9:30. At noon, it's Good Afternoon Britain. Followed by Martin Daubney from 3 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your-say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg,